everybody, happy Saturday. I am here with Elizabeth and Joanne, and we're going to be talking about the 5 biggest mistakes that people make when they start a fashion brand. So as you probably met Elizabeth and Joanne before, but just so you know, Elizabeth's an ex-retail buyer and Joanne is a designer. So between the three of us, we can cover all of the different elements of product development and design and budgeting for fashion design, for fashion brands. So let's kick off. Hi, guys.
Hi.
They're together at Milton Keynes and I'm in South London. So is it as dull and overcast in Milton Keynes?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's always sunny here, but not today.
So is that kind of slightly odd time? Well, we're kind of past New Year now, so we're into 2019. So if you're thinking about starting a fashion brand, or if you've started one, then what we wanted to talk about was the kind of, in our work with clients, what we come across as the main mistakes that people make. And I'm going to be using some groovy little titles here. So here we go. So the first mistake you make is not understanding what your customer wants. Ta-da. So do you want to kick off with that?
Yeah, so I think keeping your customer front of mind is really important, because if you can really visualize who they are, if it's a she, a he, or whoever they are, then then you can really market to them and speak to their needs, their wants, their pain points, their desires. You build collections that fit them as well. I mean, I know you love talking about customers, so.
Yeah, well, I always say to people, if you don't have a customer, you don't have a business. And it sounds a bit harsh, but that is the reality of it. And the clearer you can be, the better. And some people get a bit nervous about narrowing it down too far. But I'd actually say it's better to get as clear as possible as who your ideal customer is, and then all the other people sort of around that person will tend to follow anyway. Whereas if you try to speak to everybody, then nobody will end up listening, and it just becomes a bit of a blurry mess.
Yeah, speak to one person and you'll really narrow who you want to speak to.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter if some people, you sift some people out, because that means you're speaking to the right person rather than the wrong person.
You kind of want to alienate some people almost.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want it to be vanilla. You want it to have a flavour. So you want it to appeal to somebody in particular. And I was thinking about this in a way. It's almost like, if you're trying to start a fire, then you don't try and set everything alight all at once. You start with something small, and you get that going, and then you add things on. And it's kind of like that with your ideal customer. It's like, get it right for one person, and then you'll attract people who are around that. But if you just make it for everybody, then people aren't really sure if it appeals to them or not.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, going through understanding why it's really important to know your customer, and going through an exercise that helps identify who they are and visualize them, give them a name, an age, what they care about, all of that, which is something that we do in the workshop, that then it really brings them to life. I know I've given my customer a name in my business, and I've got a little brief overview of her, so that I can talk to her.
Yeah, because in the workshop as well, it doesn't have to we're going to do a mood board exercise, but sometimes we say you can make a mood board of your customer, so you have a visual sort of representation of her. Because sometimes if you write it all down, it doesn't mean anything. And if you're a creative person, you want to be able to see it. That's sometimes more effective than sort of pen and paper.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's what I've got. I've got a picture. So I found a picture of somebody who looked like who I thought my ideal customer was. And then that way, if you're writing a newsletter or a blog post or Instagram story, I know that Elizabeth, you said that's something that you do, is that when you're producing that content, it's like you almost can have that picture there and you feel like you're speaking to somebody rather than just a general chat.
Or nobody as well. Some people think, nobody's listening to me. There's people are listening to you, but don't get overwhelmed that everybody's listening to you. Just try and focus on that one person that you might have met at a networking event or online or wherever you might have seen them, but somebody who is really connected with your product, just talk to them and then the people will follow.
I remember a really good analogy I once had. I can't remember who it was by now, but it was, if you're at a dinner party and you've got all your best friends there, and then you're like, oh no, I need more people, and then you go out in the street shouting, anyone wants a dinner, anyone wants a dinner, and you're just trying to get like everyone in. It's like, well, no, you want those 6 people around you, or however many people it is around you, you know, at the dinner table, not just thousands of people coming in.
Sure, and it creates that real connection with people as well, and it helps you produce products that are ideal for them, which is what it's all about. Because as small businesses, we're not going to be able to compete on, you know, on having a million billion different products, but we are going to be able to compete on creating the ideal product for your customers, so that when they look at it, they go, yeah, that's for me, and that's what I want.
And then you build that community.
Absolutely. Okay, so number 2 then, trying to be too big too fast. Or trying to act too big when you're not really. Is that fair to say?
I think, a lot of businesses, they talk about we when it's just I, whereas actually it's probably better just to say, if you are a one-woman band, one man band, just say like, I'm doing this, or can you help me with this? Because if you start sort of saying like we, even if it's just you and the dog, you know, it's sort of like you start becoming maybe a bit more like untouchable, and you want to create that connection with people. So even just that small difference of saying I instead of we, I think is a nice touch as a small business who's trying to look for connection.
Because you want to be as transparent as possible. So if you're, even by saying we, you're almost lying to your customer, and that's not the best foot to get off on. You want to be able to be as honest as possible and transparent, and the person who is going to be shopping with independence likes the fact that it's one person. So don't feel like you're conning somebody, or you're sort of, I don't know, it's almost the opposite. If you say we, you're conning them in that way.
I think as well, you know, when I look at a brand's website or social media, or the first thing I do is I go and I want to read the about page. I want to understand who it is who's producing the product and what their story is. And if it's one person and they've, you know, they're handcrafting their products, you know, for me that's exciting, that's interesting, and you know, I think that it's nothing wrong with that. And also I think the other part about being too big too fast is also about not spreading yourself too thin. So especially if you're bootstrapping, well, most of us are bootstrapping our businesses. So, you know, to avoid, if you decide you're going to create a range of 30 products, and when you're first starting out, then that is really difficult to do unless you're doing it in literally like a zero risk model where you're just producing the designs and only making them when they're being purchased. So, you know, start small, start with a really edited range, and that's again something that we go through in the workshop. So how you create an edited range that is a set number of pieces that you can you know, create something really focused and minimize your risk, and really, you know, create something special, but don't try and do too much all at once, because you can always grow. But if you start off, if you just jump in with both feet and tie up all your money and put all your risk into a massive range before you've really learned from anything, then that's very difficult, because then you don't have any money basically to try out new things later, or you very quickly find your cash flow dries up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it goes across all parts of your business, like Catherine, you're saying with your range, but also like don't try and be on like every social media platform. You know, if you know, being on Twitter, don't do it. You know, you're going to have to be so much in your business. You know, design, marketing, photography,
websites,
finance. You know, customer service, design. So you know, focus on your strengths. Really, it's very key.
Small is beautiful.
Yes.
Because I think as well, some of the most successful brands out there at the moment are trading, and they're sort of learning a little bit, doing a little bit, learning a little bit, doing a little bit, and they're the ones that are doing well, rather than trying to just put, like you say, all your money into something you believe in. You know, maybe if you've got your customer profile perfect, then it will work, but that is very, very risky strategy to do it that way.
Okay, so next one, assuming everything will sell. Well, it kind of ties back into what we were just talking about, really, isn't it? It's trying to get too big of a range too fast, assuming that everything will be a roaring success before you've really had a chance to learn from it, and not being prepared to, you know, not being prepared that some things won't work. So again, it's about that, you know, learning phase. I think it's really important that when you launch a brand, that you understand that it's going to be, the first phase is going to be that it's all about learning. So you minimize your risk, you accept some things won't sell, but you learn from that. You don't take it all personally, and you don't sort of put too much at risk right up front.
Yeah, definitely. I think, obviously having smaller units, making smaller units of certain items is more expensive, but it's better to make 50 of one dress skirt than 500, because if you've got lots of 500 units and then 3 of them don't sell, then you're stuck with a lot of units. Where if you've only got 50, then you can be a lot more nimble, flexible in how you sort of like then start moving that stock, or maybe changing it up as well. It's not so much as a risk on, like, you think like you're spending more money, but actually cash flow. And then when you do know a style is selling well, then you can start producing more of it as well, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's
retailing as well, like every Monday, we were saying before that some of the team would be so confident that something would sell, and it would just come in and nobody was buying it, and it was a shock. So also don't feel bad if some stuff does sell, because the biggest retailers can get it wrong as well. Sometimes it can tick every single box, it covers the trend, it moves on a bestseller, it's the beautiful fabric, but people just don't want it for whatever reason. That's fine, but that's why you need to try and get as fewer units in as possible so that you can learn along the way.
Yeah, learn and respond. That's the key, really. Learn and respond to it.
Yeah,
trial everything, especially at the beginning, especially when you're small. So important and also I think as well, the benefit of having done it in a big organization is that you realize that it's, as you say, it's not personal. The best buyer, who's a brilliant buyer and makes a huge difference to their department, they're going to get it wrong sometimes. And in fact, there's a great statistic that I think is really important, is you've only got a 50% chance of getting your predictions right if you've not got no sales data on that at all. Whereas if you've got as little as 2 weeks data on it, then you've got an 80% chance of getting it right. So you want to learn from that, get a reaction, see what people are doing, and then respond to it, rather than jumping in immediately and saying, right, well, I know this is going to be a bestseller, because as Elizabeth said, it can tick every single box and still not be a bestseller.
Yeah, and I think as well, so going back to not playing too big, like use your social media, like Instagram stories and polls to learn. So literally show people like snapshots. Do you prefer this fabric or this fabric? Would you like this decoration, this decoration? Would you prefer this fabric in a skirt or a dress? Or do you like a plunging neckline or a high neckline? That's how you can start getting feedback, because although you think, oh, that style is going to do well, like that poll will tell you something different, as well as if it is your ideal customer there talking to you. So really, again, play to your strengths of being small, where you can have that interaction with your customer, so that when it does come to sell it as well, that then they felt like they've had like a hand in the developments side of it too.
Because also people think that's like the first thing to outsource is their social media, and that is so scary to do that, because you're just cutting yourself off from speaking to your customer. And they're right there. People in big organizations would love to be able to get that close to their customer. So if you're removing yourself from that straight away, I'd kind of recommend not doing that and maybe trying to outsource something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next one we've got then, not budgeting properly. This is another one that's very close to my heart. So, if you look at the main reasons why businesses fail in the first couple of years, then pretty much all of them are financial. Almost all of them are financially related. So it's things like not having cash flow, and just basically not keeping track really of all of your expenditures. So when you are spending money on sampling or grading, or all these things you have to spend money on, of course, but it's just a question of being realistic about how much it's going to cost you, and then mapping it out so that you have a really clear view of, okay, so how many of these items am I going to have to sell in order to recoup my costs and to break even and to eventually make a profit. So budgeting is really important, even if you feel like you're not, the kind of cliche is that people who are creative are not as much numbers people, but I think we can all be numbers people. It's just a question of getting comfortable with it.
Yeah, exactly. If you know the numbers that you need to track, which is something, again, Catherine's amazing at, and we'll go through fully with you, but, it's kind of like, what is your just monthly costs that are going to be going out every month regardless? What is your costs when it comes to designing a collection, or maybe like ad hoc, like your yearly costs, like whether that be your website hosting, like just noting all those down so that you're fully aware of like, how much is going to be going out every month, and then what are the months when you're designing a new collection, like where is those costs going to go up, but then obviously when you launch, your income will come in more. So just being really aware of those things. But I know Catherine's very good at that.
And also like where the money is best spent as well, because I think people might underestimate how much production can cost you and how much money you have to invest in your stock up front, because that's almost like the hidden side of things, which we go into a little bit in the workshop. But what's visible to people is where people then think the money goes. So for example, like PR and marketing and maybe a catwalk, or all the sort of sexy, exciting things, but actually your money is probably better spent in the back end of things that is maybe the grey area to a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, that's something that we go into a little bit in the workshop, but trying to spend your money on the sensible things, not get overexcited on the sexy things.
And I think as well, just as I said, it's really about ownership as well. A lot of people get very kind of lost or concerned about the numbers, or confused, and then it ends up just becoming this like thing, like when people don't want to open their bank statements because they're worried about what they're going to see. And I think as small business owners, we owe it to ourselves to get educated on the numbers side. It doesn't mean you have to be a finance expert. In fact, everyone should be working with a financial expert to help them with their taxes, for example. We should all have accounting professionals who help us with that side. But apart from just doing your taxes each year, there's so much more about educating yourself on the numbers side and just getting comfortable. And even if it's just that that I need to sell 150 items each month in order to break even, if you can break it down as simple as that, it doesn't have to be about having a vastly complicated spreadsheet, but just taking that ownership and saying, right, 150 is my magic number. And then it just makes it all feel much more in control and makes you feel like you're running your business, not your business is running you. I think that's the big thing.
Yeah, and I think then you feel actually quite empowered when exactly what the goals you need to hit, because you've worked out the other little sums that you need to do. Then you can feel like, like you said, there's nothing worse than not wanting to open your bank statement or your spreadsheet. It'd be a good thing to look at.
Yeah, and when you're breaking it down, if 150 sounds scary, could you get maybe more units from wholesale and split it into wholesale and retail? I know we've plucked 150 out of the air, but
and that may well be way too high, especially when you're first starting out. You may only need to sell 10 or 5 or 1 a week, or something like that, just to kind of, but to understand what that number is for your business.
Volume from wholesale, and then fewer direct to customer, but at a higher price. But then you're sort of chugging away your volume on wholesale. That could be a good way to break it down even further.
And knowing where your peaks and flows are, like maybe some more at Christmas, maybe some more in January, maybe some more at the holiday season, like all of those kind of things. It won't be the set number each month. It will fluctuate for sure.
Yeah. And I think as well, just to be honest about the fact that, you see all these things like, oh, I built my 5-figure months, or 6-figure business, or 7-figure business. You see all of that all over the place. But the reality is that it takes time to break even, and it takes time to become profitable. But if you take ownership of your numbers and your budget, you can see that. You may see that it's going to take you, however long it takes to break even, get profitable. But as long as you can see those numbers and see that you're following a path, then I think that again it's about taking ownership and feeling in control, and rather than feeling like, oh my God, everyone else has built a 6-figure business and why am I struggling to break even, when the truth is that everybody struggles, especially at the beginning. So, don't beat yourself up.
And don't listen to those webinars.
Yeah.
Don't watch it. Yeah. All a load of crap.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the final point we've got here then is not understanding the importance of sustainability.
I know we spoke a little bit about it last week, but I mean, it's absolutely everywhere. And somebody said to me the other day that was quite interesting, that food tends to start a trend, then fashion follows, then interior follows after that. So obviously everyone talking about the veganism thing at the moment. It's
and
just
plastic straws.
Yeah, just everything is kind of flowing, and fashion is going to be the next sort of industry to get hit by this movement.
Yeah, I mean, we talked like last week when we did an Instagram live about the Blue Planet 2 effect, so the increase of plastic in our oceans and things like that, and how that's ruining our planet. So obviously we see that coming into food with like takeaway coffee cups, plastic straws and all of that. But then there was a really good documentary by Mary Portas on This Week on Channel 4 called What Britain Bought in 2018, and they actually do a whole segment on there with H&M, and they're talking about sustainability in fashion and how they're creating this new lace from leftover fishing nets and things like that. So I think, you know, like basically the big players are trying to do more. Obviously fashion is a huge pollutant of the environment. More from the big retailers, fast fashion and things like that.
She was very specific to say that H&M weren't fast fashion, they were volume fashion.
Yes, I know, yeah. The
She was like, no,
H&M. Yeah. So, but yeah, so it's just that thing where, people basically, you start becoming more aware of things, so your attitudes start changing, but then it's not until your behavior starts changing that's the tipping point in basically a trend. So basically attitudes are changing now, so behavior will start to tip more and more this year.
And it has really shifted. The whole ethical, sustainable business has grown massively. It's outpacing growth in all other areas. And I think that I think what I would just say is, really, if you're a small business and you're planning on starting a fashion brand, or you have started a fashion brand, and you're not looking at your sustainability, your ethical credentials, I think it's going to be a lot harder, because that people are turning to the small brands for this exact thing. They're looking for small batch production. They're looking for stories about the quality of the products that you're using, the fabrics. And there are people in the group using recycled fishing nets, for example, as you say, like that kind of fabric. And people, they want you to be concerned about your water consumption, organic cotton, the impact on the environment. They want to see small batch production in the UK with low air miles.
Yeah, what people are being paid, that was like a huge part of it as well. Because the other thing is also the longevity of a garment. So this fast fashion sort of one wear thing is becoming a little bit sort of soulless, which always has been. They were just talking about how can you extend the longevity of every garment. So is it something that you can trial with your samples by giving out wearer trials and saying, how many times can you wear this before it starts pilling or before the seams start slipping? You want to be able to be creating the best. Or we said before, didn't we? If you're adding consumption into the industry, you want to be able to be doing it in the best way possible. So how can you extend the lifeline of your garment?
Yeah, absolutely. And how can you, if you're allowing extra for your seams to avoid slippage and to improve the longevity of your garments, if you're doing wearer trials and changing the fit to make it more durable, then talk about that to your customers, because they want to know and they want to see it, and they're looking to these smaller brands. There's, for example, Tara Button, who's spoken in the group before, who has BuyMeOnce.com. That's had phenomenal growth because people are understanding that a lot of the energy consumption and pollution in the supply chain happens during the manufacture of a garment. So if you can buy something that is going to last that much longer, then it's a different take on sustainability. But it's almost like sustainability and ethical considerations have got to be in there somewhere as a business starting now. And it's really interesting. I read an article about the retail industry, and I really liked the way it described it. It said, you see so much information at the moment about the high street and how it's struggling, but it's almost like this is the changing of the guard. So the big, like that big kind of old style of large industrial retailers that manufacture in China in great volumes and have it shipped over. Of course, there'll always be a place for that to a certain extent, but what we're really seeing is that model kind of declining, and then this new wave of people coming in, these brands, these small brands, but they're all got ethical considerations and sustainability at the very heart of what they do. And I think it's going to be very hard for a fashion brand in 2019, a small one that's starting out, to not be talking about that, because it's almost become like the new normal, hasn't it? Like people just, people just expect it to be there. They're going to be concerned about it.
Adds to your story as well.
Because I think it is all very well, like you're saying, today there is just people kind of talking about it, and you think, oh, it's something I can think about for later. But I think it's just worth doing it now, because then you're just going to be ahead of those people that are trying to catch up later on.
Yeah, and it's right for the planet, it's right for your business as well. And the good news is that the doing the right thing for the planet has never been better for your business than it is now. So that's a great synergy that is going to be, improve both our environment and can also be very beneficial for you if you're talking about it to your customers.
Yeah, because people like boasting about things like that as well. If you can say, oh, this garment, they feel then proud to wear your product, and then they'll talk about it, and then they'll spread the word about it, and then the word will get back. So it's a great way to a bit of PR for yourself.
Yeah, you're giving your product a story that's very easy to say. Instead of just being like, oh, I love your dress, where's it from? Oh, it's just Prime might be like, oh, it's from this designer and she uses fishing nets and all of this stuff.
Yeah. And you might have your paper straw, but I've got my, recycled ocean plastics tote bag.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's something to talk about.
As someone said in the comments, shop small, buy local, support independent retailers. Absolutely. The mantra. So if anyone's got any questions, do jump on. Otherwise, we're going to talk about our workshop that's coming up.
Yeah, next Saturday, a week today.
I know. Crazy, isn't
it? Yeah. So we've only got 2 tickets left, which is crazy.
I know.
It's January the right time, but I think it's the perfect time to sort of kickstart the year with. It might be that you've thought about this idea of having a brand for yourself and having your own name on a label, but never really done anything about it. And why not let 2019 be the year to do that and, start the year off right? The tickets are only £150, but we've got a discount code for you, which is FashionFeed10. And we'll put that into the notes maybe as well.
And that's 10% off.
10% off, yeah.
So but no, it was we did it in September and it was received really well. Like everyone had such great feedback on the content, and I think people made great connections when they were there. I think even down to like my session going through like inspiration and the design process, and we gave them time to mood board, and people just had to sit there for 45 minutes and mood board, and everyone was like, I never do this. It was just giving people space to be creative and
away from real life.
Yeah, exactly. Have time to connect and chat with everyone. And
meeting people that are in the same boat as you, because sometimes it can feel really lonely. And I don't know, some people had a law background and accounting background. So it's not, if you feel like, oh, I'm not sort of the creative type, it doesn't really matter. You can meet all sorts of people there that might actually be able to help you with your brand going forward.
You'll be in the same boat as well.
Yeah, with all different skill sets were there. It was really exciting.
Yeah, and also, when we say fashion, it's clothing, it's menswear, women's wear, kids wear.
You'll get jewelry last time.
And it's also, it doesn't have to be, as you say, high fashion. So if you feel like, well, I've got a clothing idea, but it's maybe you don't consider it as a fashion brand, but if it's about clothing, then come join us. It's very friendly, so put the friendly back into fashion.
Yeah.
None of us fight.
Yeah, I think I've spoken to quite a few people that have said 2019 is their year to get out and meet people, but going to networking events feels a bit scary. This is almost maybe an easier way in to meet new people, because there's a purpose to the day.
Yeah,
it's a small group, it's lots of room to ask questions, so you can get tailored advice to your own ideas. And if you've made a start but you just want to kind of really get some assurance that you're doing things following best practice, then we've got a really creative session with Joanne, a really practical session with Elizabeth, who's going to talk to you about how you talk to factories, which is really, that kind of stuff is very hard to get your hands on if you're not in the know.
Yeah, I think that is true, and it's why not come and spend a day with us and ask all the questions that you need, rather than spending hours on Google at 2 a.m. that finding answers that you just can't find, or are really generic. You know, if you've got answers that need or questions that need answering that are really specific to your brand, like come along and ask.
I'm going to go through the numbers, so how you look at your pricing, how you make decisions about how you price, which is a really tricky thing for a lot of people, how you make sure you're making enough money from each sale, and then how you plan out, how you put together a financial plan. So very basic, simple one. And then you can leave with your mood board and your jargon buster, your script, workbook.
Yeah, which basically, this is the one from last time, but it's just got loads of information in. We've updated it, so it's got even more pages of details in, but it's like everything that we go through with all the exercises as well. So when you leave, you'll still have all that information that you can like apply to your business. So you won't just be like,
what was that
again? Yeah, exactly. You'll still have your action point. And we make you do things in the workshop in a fun way. So, you know, you can start really thinking about things.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, great to have you guys with me today. And thanks to everyone for watching. And we will hopefully see some of you next Saturday.
See you then.
Bye.